to identify how to identify?
Yeah. Tongue twister.
Hey, yeah. Cool.
Anyways.
That will be recorded for the rest of your life.
I love that for myself. Okay.
The best of the week on Relevant Radio.
All right, here we go. Welcome to Marriage Unhindered. I'm your host, Doug Hinderer, licensed marriage and family therapist. And it's Thursday. You know what that means. Monica's here. Before we get going, though, I just need to point out that, you know, in the show where we tackle all things marriage-related, and when Monica's here, we talk all things child-related, family-related, etc. Content is solely for educational purposes, not a replacement for mental health diagnoses or treatment. Ace, number one, all-around good daughter, Monica Hinderer, who's an LCPC, and I don't know what that stands for, but it means she's also a counselor of some nature. So today, with Monica, we're going to talk about how to love your child the right way and how to discipline them based on the child's love language. So you're probably all familiar with the whole love language thing by Gary Chapman as it pertains to relationships and adults. Well, he's also got a book out there that deals with children and their love language and how that should impact the way you deal with each of your children. If you have more than one child, you realize they're different, you know, and my wife and I were always struck that our 9 kids are all pretty different. I mean, you'd think there'd be some carbon copies in there somewhere, but not even close, right? I wish I'd have had this information, you know, when my wife and I were raising kids. Or maybe the better way to say it is, I think my kids wish that my wife and I had this information when they were younger, because we'd have probably done a better job of raising them. When parents express love in their child's primary love language, the child feels secure, valued, and emotionally connected, which is a pretty important thing for children to feel, right? So understanding your child's love language can help parents cultivate deeper connections and foster stronger relationships with their children, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's important to just discuss, maybe to review what a love language is and kind of Gary Chapman's whole kind of philosophy here. But essentially, we're just talking about the way people give and receive love, right? So the way we want to receive sometimes isn't always the way we give and so forth. But Gary Chapman kind of argues that there's kind of these 5 core love languages, right? So words of affirmation, acts of service, gifts, quality time, and physical touch.
Mm-hmm. Which, yeah, exactly right. So, and knowing which of those is more important to your child kind of lets you reward them and motivate them in ways that are especially meaningful to them. Now, I mean, I think all 5 are important. I mean, you know, and I personally, gifts is like last on my list. But if somebody gives me a gift, I still like it, right? It doesn't ruin my day. But if you really want to get to me, that's not the way to do it, right?
Well, and I think the point is that everyone's going to have kind of a hierarchy of what they feel is most valuable to them.
Right.
But that, you know, a healthy relationship is going to be kind of this amalgamation of all 5. And that, you know, as if we think about it in a romantic relationship, like if you never received gifts ever, you would kind of, that might not sit super well, even though you don't need them maybe on a regular basis, whereas you may need words regularly, or that the words just land so much deeper. And so why is it important to know someone's love language? Well, because it helps me love them best and in ways in which they feel that love the deepest.
Correct. There you go. Because right, by using that child's love language, that's the way that's going to make them feel the most loved and connected, right? And so when we can communicate in the child's preferred love language, it strengthens the emotional bond we have with the child. The child feels a stronger bond of connection with us, which is really critical. The child's self-esteem and emotional resilience increase, which is big, especially resilience, the ability to bounce back, right, is so important in life. Resilience is, it may be the most important virtue in life, I think. It's a top 3 to be sure. It reduces behavioral issues stemming from having unmet emotional needs, because you tend to act out. If I'm not being loved well, I'm going to tend to act out sometimes to get the attention and hopefully to get my emotional needs met, which generally ends poorly, but children will tend to act out anyway. And then it also builds a secure attachment bond with the parents. And I think maybe it makes sense for us to pause for a minute and talk about why a secure attachment bond is so important, because it's a little counterintuitive. The idea is, well, I want my child to be independent, And if they're really attached to me, that's not good. But the research is just the opposite, right? When children feel securely attached to their parent, they're more likely to take risks. They're more likely to explore their world and go out and see what's going on. So there's the research is pretty clear out there and pretty cool about why secure attachment bonds in children are really important. And one is it produces optimal brain development. Secure attachment allows for the optimal development of the child's nervous system. So, I mean, there's an actual physiological benefit here, right? So it enables the brain to use its energies to develop pathways crucial for higher level thinking, particularly in the frontal cortex, which is where we run into most of our problems, because that's where the decision-making, the judgment, and the reasoning part goes on, right? It helps children with emotion regulation, right? When children have secure attachments, they learn to regulate emotions effectively, and they don't get hijacked by emotions, right?
Our emotions often are going to be able to kind of cloud our intellect, right, or our judgment or discernment of things. And it's not that the emotions are wrong or invalid. It's just that sometimes when they're really big and really strong, we don't always make the most rational decision. Why? We're typically making a decision out of fear or survival and not necessarily thriving. And so sometimes we need to not ignore the emotion, but kind of quell it a little bit, let it come down, and then we kind of move forward. And so the crux underneath that is safety. And this is what a secure attachment gives. It's a foundation of safety because I feel safe and secure when I am known, seen, and loved, right? And so if someone can love me to my love language, I feel so seen and understood that it makes me feel secure with this person. And if I can feel secure with my parents, I feel secure with the world.
Yeah. Right. So I'm more likely to take risks, to explore my world, right? So secure attachments translates into healthier relationships in adulthood because trust and empathy come easier, right? It's better for mental health. Children with secure attachments are less likely to develop mental health issues such as depression or anxiety later because when I'm feeling safe, I'm not worried about things. And, and depression and anxiety come from just the worry that's gone, overboard, right? Too much worry. Develop better social skills. And anyway, and plus there's long-term benefits, right? So if I have secure attachments as a child, the safety and security I feel extends into adulthood. And it makes it much easier for me to form healthy relationships when I'm an adult and to handle my marriage well as well. So lots of good benefits accrue from being emotionally safe and secure and having a close attachment bond in childhood. And the love languages can help you do that.
Right, exactly. And so I think when we think about, I want to create a secure attachment with my child, like you cannot love what you do not know, right? So this is true in romantic relationships too. And of like, I want to know you so I can love you best. And the same as with our children, that each kid is going to need something a little different. And so can I be attuned to them? So I think we should spend a little bit of time on helping our listeners identify how to identify their child's love language.
To identify how to identify?
Yeah. Tongue twister there.
Cool.
Anyways.
This is live, I can't go back and redo it. That will be recorded for the rest of your life.
I love that for myself. Okay. So the first step, honestly, it's just observation. And oftentimes little kids, so adults are not always this way, but little kids often express love to others in the way they want to receive love. Yeah. So if you're a kiddo, it's constantly like making gifts for people, right? They're constantly drawing pictures for people. They're making gifts for people. They're making like little treats for people. They're trying to give to their siblings. It may be kind of a strong indicator that, hey, this kid may be really, a gift-giving kind of love language.
Yeah, and I think, so here's the challenge, though, with observing your child. That takes time. And parents tend to be very busy. And, parents, it's hard for a parent to have the luxury to just kind of sit back and watch their kid for 10 or 15 minutes play because they got stuff to do, right? And so that's hard. So, now, I'm not trying to be self-serving in this regard, but I think this is a place where the grandparents can come in handy because grandparents have more time to just kind of sit and watch the kid, right? And so grandparents can come in handy to kind of help the parents figure out what the kid's love language is.
Yeah, and I think that to observe, so you may need to like kind of take time to observe them, right, and to just key into that, but you can also kind of review past events. So one way to identify this is observing or noticing how they express love to others, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's also in what they request. So a kid who comes up and often is requesting, let's say, like physical touch,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or trying to always kind of like be right on your shoulder. They're trying to cuddle on the couch or do all these things. That might be physical touch. And so the other way is noticing what upsets them the most. So particular punishments or things that we've maybe done may get different reactions from our kids. And so part of it is even kind of reviewing, this kiddo's kind of history a little bit and being like, oh, this is interesting. Do I notice patterns?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, right. So if the kid gets sent to their room, like, yeah, okay. Well, quality time may not be a big deal, right? But if you say, hey, you're not going to get to that cupcake after dinner, right? It might be food if it's a male, right? Food might be their love language.
Not one of our 5.
Not one of the 5. I think we should add it.
The inspiration for this episode actually came from the fact that we've been focusing a lot on what criticism will do to kids. And what's interesting is that multiple kids can grow up in the same environment and one comes out maybe traumatized or hurt with a lot of negative consequences. Why? Because, if their love language was words of affirmation and they were highly criticized, it hurt more than the kid who their love language was physical touch. And so, to some degree, your kids are all going to take different experiences from the way they were raised because their love language is different. So they're interacting with the parents differently and with their environment differently. Yeah,
you see it in identical twin studies as well, right? They grow up in the same exact home, but they turn out sometimes radically different based on what's going on. So, and I think the last thing is you got to experiment. I mean, just try it, right? Try a lot of hugs, and if the kid's like, stay away. Why are you touching me? All right, well, okay, that's off the list, right? And give them a little gift, and they're like, they walk away from it. Yeah, okay, well, that's off the list, right? But if you say, hey, do you want to go with me to the grocery store? And they're excited. It's like, all right, well, there you go.
Time.
Right, there you go. So they're all meaningful, but just pay attention because one of them will jump out as being a lot more meaningful than the other, for sure.
And so it's in knowing that helps us praise and punish better. The child who is punished with their specific love language takes that punishment far deeper. That wound cuts far, far deeper than if you were to punish them with something else. And so sometimes certain punishments are maybe unavoidable.
Exactly right. Because the one thing you know for sure is every child is going to get into trouble, right? That's part of the learning process. They push the boundaries. They do things wrong.
Well, no, I was perfect.
Except for you. In Jesus. This entire episode of Marriage Unhindered is on the updated Relevant Radio app. The Relevant Radio app is completely free and updated daily with fresh articles, podcasts, and prayers.